the state is facing its worst fiscal crisis ever, probably. I don't go back before World War II, but let's just say at least since in the last half century or more. The recession is not as bad as some other. We lost 12% of our workforce in the late 80s, early 90s. We're not going to lose 12% of our workforce, I don't think, this time around. But the fiscal crisis is, I think, will turn out to be the worst ever, because not only are we facing a serious recession, but we grew very dependent at the state level on capital gains taxes. So in the 08 budget, the fiscal 2008 budget, the last full budget before this global economic meltdown, we depended on, collected $2.1 billion of capital gains taxes, and most of that will evaporate in either this fiscal year, 09 already has, or fiscal 10. The combination of the 2 years will probably take out 85% of those capital gains taxes. So when you look at that, and the fact, obviously, employment, consumer purchasing, corporate profits, all of the activities that drive tax collections are going down, and then the capital gains piece. And so we've seen already this year the governor had 3 separate times where he stepped in, working with the legislature to cut spending or raise some revenues to balance the 09 budget, and we're not done yet. He said there's another, and we agree with him, probably another $400 million shortfall for this fiscal year, and so that's the problem continues. Next year, the budget, we think there'll be a further decline in revenues, and so what's happened is not only one bad fiscal year, but we've had to rely on, and this is the good news, bad news, federal stimulus dollars. We'll probably get $2.5 billion federal stimulus dollars for the pure budget matching to hold the, comes in through the Medicaid program, but to lessen the amount of cuts that have to be made. $2.5 billion over 3 fiscal years, 9, 10, and 11. And then we started with rainy day reserves for the state of about $2.4 billion before this, before 09 began. So that's almost $5 billion, and that is a godsend. But the bad news is we're going through it very fast. We'll probably go through, by the time they close the books on 09, maybe half of that $5 billion. And then in fiscal 10, the House budget will use more than $1 billion of federal stimulus money. Not planning yet to draw down on the rainy day reserves, but inevitably I think the revenues are going to be less than forecast in the House budget and the governor's budget, so we are going to need to draw down more reserves. So I think that we will deplete most of the reserves and federal stimulus money, not all, but most of that $5 billion in just 2 fiscal years. And if you think about it, you're balancing your budget at home with savings. Well, if the fiscal crisis lasts longer and you don't get rapid economic growth and you run out of the savings, then even though the economy may have, which it will bottom out sometime in the next fiscal year, I believe, we have this huge hole to make up because we've been spending at a higher rate than we're taking in, which is understandable because revenues have fallen off a cliff. But that means fiscal 11, we begin with this huge hole, not very much in the way of revenues. So fiscal 11, I predict, will have more budget cuts. And then I think fiscal 12, the absolute best that fiscal 12 would be level budgets. I mean, like level local aid and so forth. And I think we'll be fortunate if it's only if that's the case. So I've been saying that this is a 4-year fiscal crisis, 9, 10, 11, and 12, of immense proportions, and probably not surprising because the global economic meltdown is beyond anything that one could have fathomed and is bigger than anything since the Depression. And so state government and local governments are not spared any more than individuals or families.